Hello everyone, welcome back to the 20 Dilf channel, and this is the 2006 BMW 320i E90. And what I'm going to be doing in this video is doing a complete review of the car, so driving it, what's under the bonnet, everything else about this car you're going to see in this video. So let's get into it. So let's start off with the front end of this 320i, and as you can see, it's distinctive BMW. Obviously you got the kidney grills at the front there, and this particular car has F30 inspired front lights, so the daytime running lights on this actually look really good. They've got the angel eye effect and it looks really good. Apart from that, the front end is very stock and very clean, very crisp, very BMW of this generation, and it looks very nice. So this is an executive front end. It's not an M Sport front end, which looks a bit different, as you can see, but it still looks really clean, and it suits the car very well and goes with the interior very nicely as well. Suits the character of this car. To the side of the 320i, where you will notice it's pretty bland, like most cars actually. It's got a couple of nice little creases and design pieces along the side, I suppose, but the main difference with this particular car is it is sitting on E92 335i M Sport wheels. So these are 19-inch wheels, and they really do transform the way this car looks. It looks far nicer with these wheels, because the stock 320i's come with some pretty small, uninspiring looking wheels. So I think this drastically improves the way this car looks. It's also not to mention that this particular one is on coilovers. Now I've forgotten the actual brand that it's on, but it's sitting lower. It corners obviously a lot better being on coilovers and on bigger wheels, so we will test that out when we drive it. But overall looks pretty good, and you can notice the owner's tag on the side there. Here's the admin of BMW Owners Sydney, and here's also that _blue 90. So there you go. So the silver Neo Max S coilovers. So there you go. If you want those coilovers, you can go get them, and your car will look like this after. Moving on to the rear of the 320i, you will notice the rear end is very just iconic BMW styling. So this is a very BMW looking BMW, unlike some of the newer models, I would say. But as you can see, because it's the E90, you have the first generation rear lights. So looks really good, very timeless. Moving around, it's an executive trim, not an M Sport trim, so everything's a much tamer on the body kit side of things. So still looks really good, but not as aggressive as the M Sport, of course. But down here, obviously, you have a slightly modified exhaust system. I think it's just a muffler delete. It sounds pretty good. So pretty tasteful exhaust note. I reckon it sounds pretty good for a 320i. It sounds very nice. It's a very crisp tone to it. But that being said, let's go ahead and pop the bonnet and explore what is under the bonnet. Here is the engine bay on the 320i, which is a 2-litre 4-cylinder, also known as the N46, and it's a naturally aspirated engine which produces around 120 kilowatts and around 230 newton meters of torque. And obviously, it doesn't sound too impressive, but the fact is, in this car, it's mounted behind the front axle, so it's a front mid engine, and that obviously results in a 50-50 weight distribution as well, which means that for, I suppose, an economy car, this car has a really good handling setup. So it's very well balanced, and it drives really well, as you'd expect from a BMW. So, I mean, around the engine bay, everything's mainly got covers on it. You can see in there, obviously, goes pretty far back, and let's avoid the oil leak as well. Under here, obviously, got the strut brace as well over the coilovers. Strut brace is stock, which is pretty cool to see, and apart from that, you can't really actually see too much in the engine bay. So I think we should move on to the interior. Moving on to the interior of the 320i, you will notice it's got the cream and wood interior, and it's a very executive style, and it looks really good. It suits the car very well, especially against the Mystic Blue paint job, which was also offered on the E46 M3, and it looks really stunning on this car, especially paired with this interior. All goes very nicely together. Obviously got the BMW logo on the scuff plate there, and yeah, everything seems to have aged really well. You got to consider this is almost a 20-year-old car now, and everything on the interior actually seems to have held up really well against time. And even the wood Seems really, really clear still, unlike my Lexus. So coming around to here, you'll obviously notice we've got manual seats, and that is because this is an enthusiast spec. So no electric seats here. Obviously, it's essentially, the interior is essentially, look, it's an M3 GTS at this point. It's just got half the cylinders, that's all. But moving inside, obviously you can see the steering wheel. It's an M Sport steering wheel, which was done aftermarket, and I think it suits this car very, very well. You've also got the crystal start-stop button, which is another aftermarket touch, and I think it just really helps slightly modernizing the interior a little bit, which is very nice. And it's got the single bubble dash as well, so obviously no infotainment system up there, which I think has really, really helped this car age very nicely. The models with the infotainment system there have started to look quite outdated now, and I think this just really makes this car look a lot more timeless. Moving down, obviously you got your radio down there, and then your aircon controls underneath that, and a little storage area, and a 12-volt output. And this particular car is an automatic. You can also option these as a manual. So down there, obviously you've got your manual shifting settings and your sport drive mode, and that is all very nice. Speed ZF transmission, and it shifts very, very nicely, and it's aged very, very well with this car. Okay, so what we're going to do now is take it for a drive, and I actually haven't driven this car before, so this is going to be my first time impressions of driving this car, and it is going to be, yeah, literally exactly what I find with it and how it is to drive. So let's go drive it. Is there something up with the seatbelt? Is that a trick to getting the seatbelt in? There we go. Okay, so here we are in the BMW 320i. This is the very first time I have driven this car, and so you're going to hear my honest impressions and exactly how I find this car to drive. So to start off, I already noticed the steering is quite tight, and that is because this is actually the last generation of BMW to come with hydraulic power steering. They're obviously all now electric, so it obviously helps to improve how the car feels to drive. Like, it feels a lot firmer. The steering's much heavier in a nice way, and it just feels really, really great to drive. Even just taking that corner right there, you can tell that with the upgraded wheels from the 335 and the coilovers, this car feels really, really stiff already. And look, I'm just going to say, this is an economy car. Like, it's considered a luxury car in Australia, but overseas in Europe and everything, this is just obviously an average car. Like, this is a Toyota over there, essentially. Toyotas over here drive anything like this. I think they'll be far more popular than they already are. But we're coming up to a little straight now, so what I'm going to do is shift it into manual mode. I'm going to drop a gear, and let's put the foot down. So it's not obviously the fastest thing I have ever driven, but it still gets the job done. It still gets the job done. Like I said, 120 or so kilowatts, so yeah, not a particularly power, but you got to remember this is a pretty entry-level 3 Series to begin with. Obviously this car is a slightly better spec'd version, so you've obviously got your crib interior and everything that I mentioned before. But we're coming up to my second strap here, so I think we should, I think it's only fair we put it into manual 1 and give it a little bit here. Pretty nicely, especially for what it is. So I'll put the window up a little bit actually, just so you can actually hear me a bit better. Yeah, the car feels really, really solid to drive. Like I said, 50-50 weight distribution, so the car feels very, very well balanced. It doesn't feel like my R32 where pretty much all the weight's at the front. Obviously being a BMW, it's also rear wheel drive, so if you wanted to, you could throw an LSD or weld the diff or something and do some hectic skids without even having to do too much. So that's always a positive. I mean, apart from that, the car actually only has 95,000 Ks on it, and I've been told that it actually lived most of its life in Brisbane. So it's obviously dealt with harsh temperatures and everything, and obviously, like you saw, there's not very much paint fade, if any. Actually, I don't think there's any. And overall, the car's just in really, really great shape for a 20-year-old car, and it drives like a 5-year-old car, maybe even less. Like, honestly, driving this, it feels like an incredibly well-balanced, nicely put together car, and it's just speakers. So the speakers in this car, obviously, like I said, it's a lower end of the 3 Series model, but the sound system in this car is still absolutely incredible. Obviously, the higher up you go, you can option Harman Kardon speakers and all that good stuff, but for a standard model, like honestly, this feels really good. Like, I've never personally owned a BMW, but this actually, driving this makes me really want to actually go ahead and buy one. Like, this actually feels really good to drive. I was expecting this car to feel good to drive, but not this good. Like, honestly, for what this car is, it actually feels incredible to drive. But I mean, what else can I say about it? Obviously, this car is equipped with a sunroof, which is always a positive feature. It also has indicators, which is incredible that BMW actually still offer. Indicator joke. Funny, please laugh. Taking this corner, look, there's a little sharp little bend here, so I'll approach it with a tiny bit of speed. Like I said, this car feels very balanced. It feels so stable, and it's on coilovers. It's not ruining the ride. The bigger wheels haven't ruined the ride. It still drives like a BMW should, and that's what I really like about this. And comparing this to the W203 C-Class that I used to own, honestly, I'd say this drives better. That car felt nowhere near as good to drive as this. It was a C200 compressor, so similar horsepower. Obviously, it was supercharged though. This one sounds like it's supercharged, but it's actually naturally aspirated, which is quite funny. But the C200, what it lacks over the BMW is just the interior. It's mainly down to the interior. The Mercedes still feels awesome inside. This just feels better. This honestly just feels better. This was back in the day when BMW really, really knew what they were doing. Now they've, personally, in my opinion, they've fallen off a little bit with the G80 and everything. They're still good cars on if you get the M3s and the M4s though. The entry-level cars, sure, they're still good. Issue is they start at a really, really high price now, as everything does. And personally, I'm not a fan of how the car looks. And the thing is, like most car manufacturers, they just think dumping 2 bloody huge tablets in front of you is a solution to an instrument cluster and an infotainment system. It's not. Integrate it. It makes the car look timeless, like this. Like, you don't have a massive blob of an infotainment system up here. It's just like a 2006 infotainment system. Compare it to now, it wouldn't look anywhere near as good, right? It would make the car age, and that's the issue with the newer ones as well. Because they've got these massive tablets and stuff, sure, they look nice and contemporary now. In 10 years' time, they're going to look really, really outdated, and it's going to drastically decrease the value of those cars because they're going to feel outdated and old and all of that. This still feels pure. This still feels like a proper BMW, and that's what I really like about it. That is what I really, really like about it. And yeah, I suppose what it's down to now is, would I recommend you buy one of these or a Mercedes C200, I suppose. So let's just compare it, for the sake of this, to the W203. Now, having spoken from experience of owning a C200, I would say this car does almost everything better. I think the one thing that the Mercedes did a little better is it just had a couple of more features, like an air purifier and things like that. But obviously, I'm not too familiar with the spec sheet of this car, so it is maybe possible that you could have optioned those parts in. These cars are very customizable from factory, BMW individual especially. They've got a lot of car customization programs and things you can do with your BMW to make it uniquely yours. So yeah, I personally think this really does hold up to name. The ultimate driving machine. I think it is an ultimate driving machine for what it is, and the Mercedes really cannot match how this car drives. So for that reason, I would literally I would recommend this to anyone looking to buy a first car. I would say get one that's been well maintained, because obviously you need to stay on top of the maintenance with BMWs, otherwise that's when they have problems. And yeah, so you need to, if you look after the car, it'll look after you. And yeah, so I would recommend it to anyone looking for their first car. I'd also recommend it to anyone who is looking for a comfortable cruiser, maybe take it on motorways, maybe drive it around town. Something that it's cheap enough for you to, like, maybe if it gets a scratch or something, you wouldn't care too much, but it still retains those luxury features that you expect from a BMW. So look, for that, I think this car is absolutely perfect. And yeah, I mean, they look really good as well. Like I said, they're timeless. Like, this in my mind is a 10-year-old car. Like, I was speaking to the owner about it, he also reckons it's a 10-year-old car, looks wise. So yeah, anyway, so we're pulling into my favourite little spot using the indicators. Crazy, never seen before. Insert another BMW indicator joke here. So yeah, look, I think I'm going to finish off by ending the video there. Thank you very, very much for watching, and if you want me to review your car next, just let me know, and I will probably do it. So yeah, closing thoughts on this car. Really, really great car. I would highly recommend you get one that's been well maintained, and yeah, I mean, I really like it. It's actually made me really want to buy a BMW for whatever reason. So I'm gonna go check Marketplace when I get home. You should do the same. Buy yourself a BMW 320i. Brilliant car. Awesome car. I'm actually really, really impressed with it. So yeah, I think that's it for the video. So I will see you in the next one.